Hello.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Carl.
How you
My
doing?
new friend.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. How are
Yeah,
you doing?
good. Um, Thanks for agreeing for us to record this. I've just been part of some of these conversations recently, and then they just, really inspiring. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could share this. So, if this is an amazing conversation, we can share it with whoever they are. Just help connect the dots around this kind of
Yes.
movement of growers and everything. But yeah, I'd love to kind of hear a bit about what you're doing and why you're inspired by it and everything like that.
Sure. So I've been volunteering with an organisation called Bloom Network for the last 2 years,
Yeah.
which is about connecting like the international community with regenerative culture things. So gardening in the urban backyard is one part, but we kind of cover everything. So we want people to learn about like how mushrooms can be used for all kinds of things, how we can use decentralized, what are they called, DAOs? Decentralized autonomous organizations.
Mm-hmm.
The like Web 2.0, which is kind of blockchain related ways of designing your organizations, as well as the kind of more eco-friendly route as well. But we kind of want to cover everything that will help transform our society to a more regenerative culture, moving away from that extractive stuff and putting it into it. So so for the last couple of years, we've been doing these community calls on different topics, and we've been ramping them up over the last 6 months. And our next call is about burners and bloomers, as you saw. Burners who are doing regenerative projects like yourself, and how to connect burners into doing something more meaningful than just partying, because there's a huge network of population of burners, and a lot of them want to be doing meaningful stuff, but they don't quite know how to get into it. So that's what this call is about, to kind of bridge some of those gaps.
Cool, thanks, Hannah. I might just jump in there because I realise if we do share this, some people might not know what burners are and a little bit of the context of how we ended up connecting. So I'll go into who I am and what I'm doing. So my name's Carl Freeman, and we've got an organisation called farmnextdoor.org, and we've got a $100,000 worth of research funding connected to Massey University. We're in New Zealand here. Looking at hyper-local food and community-centred agriculture. So yeah, similar to the Bloom Network in a lot of ways, I think. So looking at sustainable local food production, but what can we bring in from the times that we are in with digital connection, information, all that type of stuff. So in some ways it's going backwards to indigenous wisdom, but some ways it's going forwards and using appropriate technology to help people learn quickly, connect quickly, and all that kind of stuff. So I think similar things going on. We're also really interested in how to in this research project specifically to look at how do we expand the consumption of really healthy food beyond just the usual farmers market attendee, and how local producers connecting in a real way to people might be able to help that story, and also creating more convenience and visibility. And I saw you post in one of the Burning Man Facebook groups that I'm part of about connecting your organisation and burners, people that attend different Burning Man events around the world. I really love burning. I used to go to a Burning Seed festival in Australia, which is one of the Burning Man events around the world. And it is just such a beautiful, joyous example of a different way of being in this world, the gift economy. I think that, I love the idea of connecting the dots between these two networks like you're doing. So yeah, keen to hear a bit more about your thoughts on the culture of burners and what that can be brought, what can be connected and worthwhile for the regenerative agriculture movement.
Cool, great to hear you went to Burning Seed. That's one of what I call my home burns as well. I help run the orphanage and Sacred Seed down at where the Indigenous Aboriginal camp is, first camp. Been doing that for like 6 years now. So it's sad that we're not going there this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously involved with the New Zealand burners here as well. So your question was, how can we link burners into this more? It definitely is a lot of conversations, I think, and just bringing that awareness out there is what we can actually do differently. And we've, like yourself, we've heard about doing urban farming. We've seen other people doing it, but it's kind of that next step of it going into actually doing it. And one of the things I mentioned in our online conversation was that I've just won some funding to create some resources around building soils, urban soils, so that they become those deep-rooted soils that we really want to help with gardening, but also to help with flood mitigation and allowing those sinkholes in the city to appear again instead of just the water running off the top. So that's just a small parcel of funding, but still exciting to get as part of my kind of Bloom work actually here on the ground in New Zealand. And so we have a good relationship with the Burners Without Borders people in America as part of the Burning Man project, and I'll be talking to them today as well about the call. So we're just really keen to find the people that want to take the next step and go from beyond burning and bloom, turn into bloomers and start, taking some of those amazing principles that we learn at those events, because Burning Man's quite different to a festival in the sense that it's really an experimental community, and how can we run those communities in a really interesting, effective and fulfilling way. And one of the reasons why I want to start a Northland Burn is because I want to incorporate a lot more Indigenous design principles and work with Māori here as a 50-50 relationship and build what I'm kind of calling a Burn 2.0. It's a new version of how we create the city that has titiri or waitangi woven into it. So, so that's why that group is there. And it's funny because so many people joined immediately, because we set that group up just after Kiwi Burn sold out, and it got flooded with all these people just wanting to party. And I'm not interested in creating another party. I'm really, really interested in creating an environment where we can experiment with different city design and urban design and start teaching people how to live differently. So the agricultural movement is it's just one part of what Bloom's doing. So I'm actually not an expert at all. I just saw that there was this pot of funding available, and I thought, actually, this is a really important project for people to learn, actually just how to build a good soil. Yeah. So I'm going to be learning about it as well, which is why I'm super keen to connect with you, because you probably know more than I do.
Yeah. Well, there's so many people working on this kind of stuff, so we'll be able to connect lots of dots for you. And yeah, there's people, close to where you are in the North Island of New Zealand, who might be able to give you some hands-on advice. And yeah, that's one thing I'm realizing right now is that there's so many. When an idea's time has come, it's like the zeitgeist that pops up everywhere all at once. It's how do we connect all these dots as quickly as possible. And I think conversations like this, and then sharing the conversation so more people are aware. For example, I had no idea the kaupapa, the real meaning of the Northland Burn that you're setting up, which is I'm really excited by. It's a quick conversation like this can explain so much very quickly. So a bit more of my history that might connect in. I'm very excited about what you're setting up in, and I'm excited to attend the Northland Burn, whatever kind of ends up looking like. So yeah, keep me informed about all of that. But yeah, tell me, who did you get this funding for from up where you are?
It's called the Kaiora Fund, and it's funded through our local primary health organisation, Mahitahi. I used to work for that organisation about 5 years ago, and so I'm still kind of connected in, and that fund was running when I was still there. So yeah, I just thought it would be an interesting thing to enter. So the Kyoto Fund is about securing food security in Northland. So they're doing it's the whole of Northland, so all the way up to Cape Breton, and I'm in Whangarei. And they're looking for projects that will kind of build resilience in their community, which is why the soil urban project is a good fit for them.
Great. Okay, so I think, are you aware of the Urban Farmers Alliance that's been set up?
I've been perusing your website ever since I came across you 2 days ago, so
Yeah.
I did know, that was the thing, but I haven't signed up for anything yet.
Yeah, so the Urban Farmers Alliance, so there's two different things. Then, like I was saying, there's lots of stuff popping up. So we had a research for farmnextdoor.org in Taranaki, and that's really focused on, doing what we can regionally here over next year that could be a template for other regions to replicate. So we're going to be supporting lots of different forms of community-centred agriculture. And connecting to consumers, and then nationally at the same time, the Urban Farmers Alliance has started. So in Auckland, there's the Organic Market Gardens (OMG). In Wellington, there's the Kai Cycle. Down in Christchurch, there's the Cultivate Christchurch. And then those three kind of urban hubs have joined together. We've joined into that, and then there's a whole lot of people who are interested in urban agriculture that's joined into that network, and they've actually started doing some really useful YouTube videos under the banner of Regenerate Now. So I think that content on YouTube of Regenerate Now, it's basically what you need to learn basically and teach others. So connecting into what they're doing, I think is going to be really fruitful for you and whoever you're helping, because there's some really deep conversations, hour and a half conversations, and they kind of walk through people's urban plots and give them advice along the way of how to create that really healthy soil, store carbon, quick plant growth, making a actual business structure for people who are wanting to do that, to actually be able to make a livelihood from growing food and connecting to their local communities. So yeah, Regenerate Now, I think, and the Urban Farmers Alliance is going to give you lots of information. And then we're hoping to be able to do lots of stuff with Farm Next Door as well. And we've got our first workshop is on soil health, and how do we actually bring this form of intensive market gardening into the regenerative agriculture dialogue, because currently they're kind of separate things, but you can actually fulfill all the same aims of regenerative agriculture. You don't need a big farm to do it. You can build soil, you can have lots of diversity, you can use animals in different ways. A lot can be done in the suburban backyard, or the unused school field, or whatever, where we're setting up plots, or the unused council land. There's lots of opportunities to build soil and build community and add diversity and health to the system, regenerate the system.
That's what really inspired me, is that I went to a chat with the Walter Jean, who's all about soil regeneration, but he was talking more on the large farm scale, and I was like, well, that's awesome, and we definitely need that, but the majority of people generally are living in urban areas, and we also want them to tap into this knowledge and understand why it's important to have regenerative agriculture on a big scale. And a good way to do that is to teach them how to do it on their urban smaller scale, and get it going there as well. Yeah, part of my reasoning for getting into food was actually through social movements. I was part of the Occupy movement after being an artist and a creative. I got more into social movements as a creative expression, and I saw in the Occupy movement two things. I saw fantastic facilitation for the first time, and how that can be almost a magical experience of groups coming together and coming to a point of view, even though they're very different people.
And I also saw that the kitchen and where the food was produced was actually such a connecting point for the movement. So out of that, I did a bit of research and tried to see who was still active from the movements of the 70s, the kind of return to earth and the facilitation or everything from that 70s movement. And I ended up living at a community 1 hour north of Melbourne that had been running since the 70s, co-housing community. And there I fell in love with the actual hands in the soil because they had a big kind of kitchen garden. So yeah, that's where I actually fell into the love of actually growing food. So yeah, in some ways, all these conversations are connected for me as well, about community organising, food. I think, I think there's a connection point there. I often feel like a real divergent thinker. Like people go, oh, you're connecting a lot of dots there. But yeah, I think we're entering into a new paradigm where we have to do things differently. And like you were saying before, and like I was saying, I think in some ways it's returning to the past, in some ways it's incorporating these new tools we have into something, the 0.20 or the hyper local or whatever we're calling it. There's a connection point. Yeah.
We can brand it anything that we want, really, but the general idea is there. And I like to think of it more as like we're integrating the past. We're not going back to the past. We can't go back to the past. We've done way too much damage to the earth to consider that. But we're definitely at a place now where we're integrating a lot of knowledge from all over the world and Indigenous traditions, and we're working out how to create that's the best of all the worlds that we've learned from, sampling them and putting them into our soil and whatever we're doing. It's really a cool time to be around. Oh, I'm talking to you in Taranaki just by phone, casually. I can work on documents at the same time as someone working on a document in America. It's a really cool time to both have these really cool tools, but bringing back some of the stuff that we've almost lost.
Yeah.
Teaching people those skills again.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way, on the epic amount of funding. Like, how did you go from, I have nothing about you, but did you have any funding or reputation at all, or did you suddenly get $100,000 worth funding? How did that happen?
So yeah, I mean, I have been part of I've done funding and grant application as a job, and I've been a part of a lot of startup enterprises and stuff in Australia, and done a lot of those different programs. Lucky enough to be privileged enough to weasel my way into opportunities like that. So yeah, I've been skilled up. So we moved to Taranaki from Australia 3 years ago, and we had a young son, so I decided to really focus in close to home. So we started our suburban farming business, and testing out this model of whether you can make a living from growing food from a very small bit of land around your quarter-acre house and whatever the plots. So yeah, kind of focused on testing that model for 3 years when we first moved over. But now my son's reaching 5 years old, started to prepare to be thinking about social movements again and thinking about on the bigger picture. And yeah, it's a bit of synchronicity and serendipity that this research fund emerged. So someone's left a bequest, and this fund was created with the stipulation of research in Taranaki, agricultural research in Taranaki, that's connected to Massey University. So yeah, a Massey University researcher had visited our urban farm 6 months before. So I reached out to her and said, do you want to put an application in? And she brought in a whole heap of other researchers and some researchers from the Netherlands, from the Wageningen University, which is the world's top agricultural research university. And yeah, we put in a bid, and I think, there was like 12 other applications, and we were successful. So yeah, that's kind of where that's all come from. But yeah, I definitely feel comfortable, putting in applications and, doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a funny one because in some ways it's the beautiful life that we're trying to create isn't actually, you know, putting in funding applications and running big organizations and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I feel uniquely, I have been taught how to do this stuff. So in these times when, you know, all of a sudden the terrain is shifting, there's lots of extra funding available. It's like, well, if I don't do it, and apply myself and connect the dots and build movements, a lot of other people in this sphere don't have the skill sets to do it. There's an incredible privilege in, you know, actually knowing the right language to put into a funding application, and otherwise it's just the status quo. The privilege of the status quo. I was thinking the other day, that actually gets this funding, because if you say one wrong word or one wrong thing, you're instantly in the no pile. So yeah, there's, you know, again, it's, do what I can to actually create this change in these times.
Yeah, it's definitely a good skill to have at the moment, to have good grant writing skills.
Yeah.
Can I ask, do you ever get questions about what your son does now that there's no back lawn to play on?
Yeah. Well, we've actually just moved, which is a really big thing. So we moved just after the lockdown. So we've moved away from our little urban farm. But before that, you know, you know, over this kind of last period, everyone's, you know, put the swimming pool in their backyard. They've bought all the books and they have them on the shelves. So actually these places, bump spaces for the community, has been taken away. And same, the grass in the backyard. So your kids kick the ball around there means actually they don't go to the public park. Or if they've got their own playground in their backyard, it means they don't go there. So with my son, you know, we spend a lot more time going on adventures out to playgrounds and to sports fields and riding our bikes along the walkways and everything like that when we had our urban farm. And, you know, it's also, he grew up, you know, his lunchbox looks very different from the other kids at kindy. You know, it's got carrots and beans and peas and a whole lot of stuff that we're growing at home. And he is able and, you know, excited to eat all that stuff because he's seen it's part of his story, and he's been eating it out of the garden his whole life. So I think that, that's real benefit, and so nice, you know, for me as well, just being able to go out at any time and get fresh herbs and all that kind of stuff. It's part of the joyous, bountiful life. But we've recently moved. It's a very long story there, but we're still connected into our old place as well. A friend's bought our house with the urban farm on it, and we're going to be basically working alongside him on it.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so we're still connected in. But yeah, that's all part of me spending a bit more time helping others during this phase as well. We've actually moved away from it. So
to do it more, you've moved away. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, it's great to hear that you're out in the neighborhood doing stuff with your boy, exploring all the things. My job when I was at the place that does the fund that I've now won, Mahi Tahi, I was the child-friendly city coordinator. So working on how do we make our city more child-friendly and using the children's rights as a guide. So not just urban design, but like whole spectrum of life for children. So it's definitely something near and dear to my heart, is like how kids access the space.
Yeah, it's great. It sounds like a pretty fun job.
It was hard though, because there wasn't a lot of funding to kind of push it all the way through to where it really needed to go. But I'm still passionate about it, and we're getting into a good place here in Whangarei of incorporating, like I said before, Māori design more into our urban landscape. And we have a papakainga policy now, so that people can start building. Papakainga is the Māori word for the way that the villages were set out pre-European times. And they're working on being able to create legally now papakainga on Māori land, which is exciting. And eventually they want to kind of get that to spill into our urban landscape as well. So so it's all kind of child friendly, regenerative, kind of, it's all kind of merging together. And what I want to do with the Northland Burn is to kind of put all that into a testing pot of a temporary city and see what, have that immersive experience and see what it's like.
Great. Can you, paint, like expand on that and paint a bit of a picture of what that all kind of looks like? Say on a, if we're retrofitting suburbia or retrofitting the cities, what would that look like?
It's a great question. And actually, there have been some really great conversations. I don't know if you've heard of the Aotearoa Town Hall that's been going on during lockdown. Yep. They've been having those exact discussions on how you bring urban and Māori principles into the design network there. A lot of it is about how do we honour the land that was already there. So if you're building a building over a stream, how are you going to honour that stream within your building? A lot of it is about bringing the native wildlife back into the city. How do you do that? I'm super passionate about less cars and more bicycling and more walking. But as you probably know, there's a lot of arguments to and fro between what is good about that, what's bad about that. But ultimately, I definitely want kids to be able to have the kinds of benches that they used to. Like if you look at a map of, say, great-grandparents and the roaming area that they used to use, and then you go down the successive generations, our children today are barely leaving their front yard, they're barely being able to go down to the dairy to buy an ice cream, which is one of the tests that we have in child-friendly cities, is can your child walk to the dairy and come back with an ice cream before it melts? Because, do they have to stand and wait at the traffic lights for ages, or is it they can't cross the roads at all and then the ice cream melts all over their hand? So that's what they call that, the ice cream test. So I'm, really want kids and all of us to be able to just travel safely without using a car all the time.
Yeah, in our new house that we've moved to, it's actually a really vibrant little suburb. So there's a lot of kids out on the street. I like a real noticeable difference of, like, I go, oh, they're very young. They're out there doing their own things, or they're walking to school at a really young age. So we can ride our bikes to kindy, and my son only has to cross one road, or he's 5 and about to start school, so he'll be able to do the same, get to school with only crossing one road. And we do have a local little vibrant shop area where it's got a good little cafe, it's got a bakery, it's got the fish and chips, it's got all this stuff that is active and in a walkable distance. So yeah, it's really exciting, and I think we need to keep thinking about actually what do we need in each of these little suburbs to create a good community, and especially after the whole COVID-19 lockdown thing, where we've seen a lot more people walking in the streets and everything like that. Starting to imagine what it could be.
It was really a fantastic gift to be able to experience our living places without cars for those 4 weeks. It was just amazing, and I definitely don't want people to forget that. Hey, I've got another meeting I need to hop onto. Sorry.
Right, cool. Good.
on the call on Monday, I'll just get you to, when I introduce you, just get you to talk about what you're doing for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We will get all the people that are there to talk first, and then we'll have the questions afterwards.
Cool. And I might actually post this video up. So do you want to explain how do people find that conversation?
Sure. So the conversation we're having Tuesday, 9 a.m. New Zealand time, 2 p.m. Monday Pacific time, Pacific US. It's called Burners and Bloomers. So connecting burning world with the Bloom network and regenerative culture world. You can find the links on our community calls page at www.bloomnetwork.org.
Great.
And it's free, so join us.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, I look forward to chatting more then.
Cool. Thank you, Carl. And
All
if you
right,
want to
see ya.
continue this conversation, we can do that another time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Nice.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.